The Bidens can't seem to escape the Clooney coup as reports continue to swirl that Joe, that was like I mixed them up. Joe and Jill want back into politics, and the duo were seen yucking it up on Broadway with Hollywood stars this weekend. While Clooney's colleagues were schmoozing with the Bidens, the op-ed king himself says he has no regrets on sinking Biden.
I feel as if there was a lot of profiles in cowardice in my party through all of that, and I was not proud of that, and I also believed I had to tell the truth.
And Clooney isn't the only one tired of Biden. His own aides and Democratic allies don't want him anywhere near the party, some calling the idea of having Joe around again a joke or an SNL skit. Greg, it's like the Democrats cannot read the room. The Bidens were voted out.
I think, Clooney's charm is that he always seems restrained. He's the opposite of radical. But the weird thing is, without a horse to back, do you really know what he believes in? Like, I know what he's against. He's against Trump. But in this new world of common sense, what does he align with? He might have way more in common with Trump than he is with the progressives. The question is, does he have the bravery to say that? I have no idea where he stands on the border, sanctuary cities, or trans extremism. How does he feel about the fires in L.A.? Is he happy with how it was handled by Mayor What's-Her-Face and Governor who's his name? So when he talks about cowardice, he waited a long time, but he should have the guts to maybe say that his friends in Hollywood, like Jon Voight or Mel Gibson or Sylvester Stallone, who shared a risk, might have been right on a few things. He's starring in Glengarry Glen Ross, am I right?
No, it's Good Night and Good Luck.
Oh,
sorry,
never mind.
My fault.
I was going to say, they have tremendous respect for David Mamet. David Mamet is one of the most conservative people. So maybe instead of just sitting in silence, you should actually speak up for some of the people who shared the risk in Hollywood. That's bravery.
And I didn't like this part, Judge. He says, I was raised to tell the truth. But he didn't tell the truth until after the Biden-Trump debate, when Obama was basically like, can you write this op-ed and try to get him out? Because just 2 weeks before, they had that big Hollywood thing where Biden had problems, and George Clooney said, everybody in the audience, give me your money so that I can pass it on to Joe Biden, because I'm here to do a fundraiser for him because he's the best thing for the next 4 years. And 2 weeks later, he writes the op-ed.
Well, I think, as you said on your show today, they were waiting for the checks to clear.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, look, George Clooney doesn't impress me. He really doesn't. And I honestly don't care what he thinks about the border or anything else. I think, this Johnny-come-lately, I was raised to be honest, is a bunch of BS. All right. Obama told him to do it. He sees himself as this extremely important person. I think he's an arrogant, condescending, smug individual who thinks that, he should be able to tell people in America, and the Democrat Party certainly, what they should and shouldn't do. This president, Joe Biden, is one of the most disastrous presidents that we've had in American history. I don't think there's any question about it. What he did with the border, what he did with Afghanistan, the man was an embarrassment. And in the end, this whole idea, and I'll just jump into this for a second, that Joe and Jill, they want to get involved and help the Democrats out. The Democrats want no part of them, and nobody's going to take them up on it. And so I think it's interesting that when he went to the play, no one booed him, yet they booed J.D. Vance at the Kennedy Center. And I'm just curious as to whether or not he fell asleep during the play.
I might have. Jessica, would you like to see somebody like Clooney try to run?
I don't think necessarily Clooney, but there is an appetite for people outside of the normal political class. Obviously, Mark Cuban is testing the waters on that. I've heard people talking about The Rock. Mixing it up worked for the Republicans, and it gave a wider range of voters, people who are not necessarily concerned with politics, the chance to connect with someone on a more pop culture level, right? Or to hear a couple of things that they liked and then to show up at the polls and vote for them. And so I think there will definitely be people who work in business, maybe someone in entertainment that tries it. I don't think it'll be Clooney. But this is what Clooney is talking about is going to be very important for the rebirth of the party and how 2028 goes, because people who are running for president are going to have to answer about 2024 and what they really thought was going on, and if there are any mea culpas about it. If you just say we had to hang on because we needed to win the election, I think that actually is a legitimate argument to make. You thought there was an existential threat. The American public disagreed with us, though, but you're going to have to answer it.
Still have no idea what he believes in.
George Clooney?
Yeah.
He's not why? What do you mean?
Well, no, my point is like everything that Trump has done is right in the meat of common sense. So is Clooney going to just stick with the progressive side, which is killing your party, or not?
No.
What do you think, Jesse?
Well, Clooney just called his party a bunch of lying cowards. So do you want to be in a party that are surrounded by a bunch of lying cowards? I don't know. Maybe he will run for president. A Democrat who tells the truth. We'll see how that shakes out. Swalwell was at a White House picnic in 2023, went up to Joe Biden, said, "Hi, how are you doing, sir?" Joe Biden didn't recognize him.
Right.
Joe Biden was on the debate stage in the primary. He knew who Swalwell was. Swalwell's on TV all the time. He had no idea who Swalwell was. And for the next year and a half, Swalwell didn't say anything and defended Joe Biden, said he was sharp, said he was much better than Trump. Yeah. He was willing to let Joe Biden run the country into the ground just because he didn't want Trump to run the country. It's pretty pathetic, Jessica, if you ask me, even though no one asked.
Do you have Swalwell on the show tonight?
No, we have Devin Archer on the show.
Oh, that's a good
looking
one.
forward
All right,
to that.
A little double tease.
Amazing.
All right, coming
Yeah.
up, President Trump is calling out Colorado over a presidential portrait.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.